Hi there, I'm Kate Holmes. I am the host of this wonderful podcast called Put Down the Mascara, where we focus on living authentically and really, truly living our beings and cutting through the bull sheesh. And that's really what we're going to do today, is talk about real life stuff. So I'm here with Nicole. Nicole works in a fairly new industry. She is an entrepreneur at Restore Your Peace. And what's Restore Your Peace? A divorce coach. This is absolutely a wonderful role that you have and so important. And I'm sure some people are going to be saying, I wish I knew about this sooner. Often when you're dealing with a high conflict ex and you are separating, you are dividing households, dividing assets, it becomes very contentious at the best of times.
Yeah.
Nicole, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am a mom of 3. I've also went through a very difficult divorce. So I have a little bit of experience in that area. But I've also worked with in this field as well, working with clients that have been through this process. And I just found myself wanting to kind of be that sound, that person that you can go to get kind of that feedback that you need, that I wish I had when I was going through it. So, and there's just so much to know and so much to take in, because it's a very overwhelming process.
Extremely overwhelming process. Let's start this conversation with, how do you identify if you're dealing with a high conflict ex? Because how do you know that you could be separating and there's always going to be contention as you're separating. Yeah. But how do you know if it's truly a high conflict divorce that you're going to be dealing with?
For sure. That's why I like to say to my clients is that every divorce, most divorces, you're going to have a rough patch. It's going to be difficult, whether it's the first year or so, maybe a bit shorter, maybe a bit longer. It's difficult. It's an emotional process. When it gets to kind of a different level is when it's really past that year and when you're noticing that there's no collaboration to problem solve. So your ex may be you might find that it feels like the motive is just to be spiteful and be difficult and to really just get at you. And the best interest of the child is being lost. So.
And to collaborate, you really do have to put the kids first. And how do you get to that point where you can actually do that and take away that spite? And I know that that's a question, but how do you begin to work together in a high conflict situation?
So what I say is really you can only control yourself. So you can't control what your ex is doing. So you can try as much as you can to work together and to collaborate and make decisions that are best for your children. But you can't control what your partner is going to do. So you have to know your own truth. You need to kind of stand in what you believe is best for your children and try not to get sucked into kind of the back and forth of the spitefulness, which is easier said than done because emotions run high, for sure.
It's a very emotionally charged process. And when you get to that point of being able to let them. So Mel Robbins has a great podcast about let them. So how do you get to a point where you're saying that's going to happen in the other household and I have to let that happen? That's not what I would do in my household, but I have to be comfortable with how they are spending their time with the other parent.
Yeah. It's a process. It's trial and error. You have to be able to separate what you can control and what you can't. So, and sometimes that's really difficult to know. And that's why it's helpful to have a divorce coach too, because they can help sift through, okay, what are you in control of? What are you not in control of? And being able to have that radical acceptance of, okay, this is something that's out of my hands. And what do I do when something's out of my hands? So it's good to have that sounding board because, like I said, during the process, it's highly emotional. And sometimes you're thinking, am I making the right decision? Am I making the wrong decision? Am I making it worse? So it's good to have that person to help with that.
Absolutely, it is. And do you know the Grey Rock
Yes.
process. So let's explain to our audience what the gray rock process is.
Okay.
And then we'll talk a little bit about yellow rock, because I think that's a much preferred process.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about.
Gray rock is a form of communication for with a high conflict person. It doesn't have to be an ex; it can be with anyone. It's easy to get sucked into kind of the whirlwind of messages that you might get, or the communication. So there might be accusations being thrown. You might be second guessing yourself. There'll be lies, half truths, and so gray rock is really just being as boring as a gray rock. So it's really just having very minimal responses, not getting sucked into the back and forth, no feeling, just facts, and very short, concise responses.
Zero emotion, like a gray rock.
Yeah, zero emotion.
And that strategy definitely works, because it does shut down a high conflict person, because you're not battling back and forth. You've completely stopped engaging, but still engaging in a way that.
And a lot of times, and a lot of times the high conflict person is looking for that reaction from you. So it's kind of like, just poking the bear. They want to see what they can get. And sometimes it's with a high conflict person, that's what their goal is. So, and like I said, it's easier said than done, because it can be very difficult to read some of those messages and know how to respond. And you might want to respond right away. But it's learning that self-control. It takes practice.
It does. And I think you also need to give yourself grace. Nobody's perfect. Sometimes that button's just going to be hit and game over.
Yeah.
And you have to give yourself grace with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, I know that the courts sometimes see gray rock as non-collaborative, and they'd like to see parents working together. So gray rock has kind of evolved to yellow rock.
Yeah.
The evolution of the rocks. And so tell us a little bit about yellow rock and why that is more preferred.
Yeah.
I think yellow rock feels more like a human being. There's a kinder element to it.
Yeah.
So I'll let you talk about that.
So yellow rock is really seen as gray rock, but with a little bit more friendliness, being amicable. You're right in that what we're seeing is that the courts are seeing gray rock as just being kind of dismissive, and not collaborative at all.
Right.
So, and it's not about being fake. Like, yellow rock is being yourself. Like, if you are that parent that wants to work with your ex, no matter what disagreements you have, no matter what he or she has done to one another, but you want to move forward, it's being yourself. And it has that twist of like a friendliness tone onto it, saying, have a good day, enjoy the weekend with the kids. They're looking forward to it. It's okay to be amicable, and it's okay to say something positive. And it's more real, but at the same time, you're still being conscious of your own boundaries, and you don't want to engage too much, and you still want to kind of step back a little bit and still have just concise responses, so you're not too sucked in again.
And I think different strategies are going to work for different situations. Everybody's going to have a unique scenario that they're working within. And so you have to really consider what's going to work for you. The amicable piece is so important, in my opinion, because that does trickle down to the children. And the kids really are number one. So sadly, your relationship has not continued. It is not working for many different reasons. You still brought these beautiful beings into the world, and it is so important that they are raised with high values and in loving homes. And part of that is if they're feeling the stress and the negativity, that isn't good for them.
No. And they can pick up on that, definitely. If you're, imagine reading a message that hit a trigger spot for you, and then you have a little one that's needing your attention. How might, you respond to your child? You might be a little bit distracted. You might be short-tempered. So children can definitely pick up on that, and they can pick up on the stress. Even if they're not directly exposed to it, they're indirectly affected by it.
They absolutely are. And from your perspective, where do you want to put your energy? So do you want to always focus on the negative and be in fight mode, or do you want to change that dialogue? And again, everybody's situation is different and that might not work, but really it's about preserving yourself. And I love how you're saying stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
So how are you as a person and carrying that through the divorce process and how you're raising your children? And if being a yellow rock is the way to go and that makes it feel more like you, all the more power to you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think you want to be able to look back at that time, especially when your children are growing. And I know for myself, I don't want to look back at this time and think, oh, that was just so much stress and so much hate. It's so much, so much conflict. Like, I want to be able to look back and say, you know what, I tried my best. And of course, you have to allow yourself to have mishaps and things that you might have done differently, but you learn from that. And what I said to my clients is you want to be able to look back and feel like I did my best that I could do. And your children will see that. It comes through.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. They don't miss anything.
No.
And I think working with a divorce coach is all about giving you the tools that you need in your toolkit to be able to move forward, and knowledge is power. And I think that's really important to have somebody that you can touch base with and say, in this scenario, what do people do, and guide them through that. So really pleased that we have the opportunity to chat today, but we're seeing more of this in the industry because I think it's a very valuable tool. So thank you so much, Nicole, for sharing with us today. We're really pleased to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
And that's today's episode of Put Down the Mascara. Before we sign off, I want to drop a friendly reminder your way. While we do our best to bring you helpful insights, stories, and perspectives on this podcast, I want to make it clear that we're not here to replace counselors, advisors, and experts. Remember, education and empowerment are journeys we embark on together, and seeking guidance from experts along the way is great for your personal growth. Thanks again for tuning in to Put Down the Mascara. We can't wait to have you back next time. Your feedback, stories, and suggestions keep us going and fuel our passion for empowering women everywhere.